The first time I saw Peter's body lying there, I couldn't believe it. This was the same man who'd boasted just days ago that nothing would happen to him. There he was, lying lifeless, his face twisted as if he'd been shocked right up until his last breath. I still can't shake the look on his face. It was haunting. The story didn't start here, though. It started some weeks back, when old Chief Emeka, Peter's father, grew sick. I remember seeing him in his last days, a once strong man, now frail and worn by illness. Chief Emeka was a well-respected man in the village, known for his wisdom and pride in our traditions. But when his health declined, it was Peter, his only son, who he wanted by his side. "Bring Peter to me," Chief Emeka had said. "I want to speak with him." His voice was low and pained, yet there was an urgency to it. We all knew that the chief's time was short, and he wanted his son there. Peter, though, didn't come. Peter lived in the city, far from the village, and he was a busy man. He'd moved away years ago, had a good job, a nice car, and a big house. The village life, and everything that came with it, seemed to mean very little to him now. When word reached him that his father was sick, he didn't rush back like most of us would have. In fact, he dismissed it altogether. "He's old," Peter said when one of his cousins called him again. "I'm sure he's fine. I'll see him when I can." But it was clear he didn't mean to come. Even when the elders urged him, reminding him of his duty as the chief's only son, he brushed it off. "He has servants, doesn't he?" he'd say. "Let them take care of him." People in the village started talking. You see, in our culture, family and respect for your elders mean everything. When someone like Chief Emeka, a respected leader, falls sick, it's unthinkable for his own blood not to come back. But Peter had always been different. He'd grown up here, but once he went to the city, he seemed to shed his roots, even sneering at our beliefs and traditions. One evening, I visited Chief Emeka. He was sitting under the big mango tree by his house, looking out over the fields, his eyes distant. He was weak, his hands trembling as he spoke, but there was a fire in his voice. He looked at me, then the elders gathered around, and said, "If my son cannot come to care for me in life, then he should not see me in death. Tell him this, if he comes to my funeral, it will not end well for him." The words were heavy, and silence settled over the elders. No one questioned him, we all knew Chief Emeka meant what he said. This wasn't just anger, it was something deeper, something almost spiritual. It was as if he knew something we didn't. Chief Emeka passed a few days later, quietly in his sleep. When the news reached Peter, he hardly seemed moved. He called a few relatives, handling it like he was arranging a business meeting. When the elders reminded him of his father's wish, that he should not attend the burial, Peter laughed it off. "Superstitions," he said. "I'm a Christian now. These things mean nothing to me." He seemed almost proud as he said it, like he was above it all. Days later, preparations for the funeral were underway. The village gathered to pay respects to the chief, and his body was prepared in the traditional way. People spoke quietly about how strange it was that his only son hadn't been there for him in life and now was ignoring his father's last wishes in death. But, of course, no one could stop Peter from coming. On the day of the burial, Peter arrived with a convoy of cars from the city. He drove in with loud music playing, as if he were coming for a celebration. He even had a group of friends with him, people from the city who didn't seem to understand the weight of the day. They were laughing and joking, not paying respect. I remember thinking it was almost disrespectful. As the cars made their way to the village, something happened. It was on a narrow road, with steep slopes on either side. The car carrying Peter suddenly swerved. No one knows exactly why, some say the driver lost control, others claim they saw something in the road. But the car went off the path and down into a ditch. Peter was inside, and he was the only one who didn't survive. The news hit the village before the convoy even arrived. When word reached us that Peter had died, there was a stunned silence. People whispered, saying it was Chief Emeka's curse, that his spirit had taken Peter for disobeying him. Some even said they saw Chief Emeka's spirit, standing by the road, guiding the car off the path. Whether you believe it or not, the fear in the village was real. In a twist that still sends chills down my spine, Peter's body was brought to the village, and, by tradition, had to be buried immediately. His own family insisted. So Peter was buried before his father. The elders said it was the only way to appease the spirit of Chief Emeka. The villagers gathered around, watching as Peter's grave was dug, right next to where his father would be laid to rest. Some cried, but most were silent, the weight of the chief's last words hanging over everyone. The village was different after that. People whispered about the power of Chief Emeka's words, how his spirit had spoken from beyond to claim his son. Some called it justice, others called it a tragedy, but no one doubted it was real. Those of us who saw it will never forget it. To this day, people talk about it. The young ones, they're always eager to go to the city, to leave the village and its traditions behind. But they remember Peter's story, and they think twice about disrespecting the old ways. And every time someone walks past Peter's grave, right beside his father's, there's a silence that falls over them, like they're hearing Chief Emeka's voice, reminding them, respect your family, respect your roots, or face the consequences.